Hello and welcome, or welcome back if you've been here before. My name is Ian and this series of videos follows me as I ride my Royal Enfield Himalayan motorcycle from the northeast of England to Bulgaria and back. In this episode I leave the Asturian Peninsula and head for Venice. This time there's very little video and lots of stills. Keep watching and I'll explain why. Well, good morning and welcome back. We're just about packed and ready to go. There's a little motorbike, as you see, just got the final bits of packing to do. And today we're off to Italy. I'm going to be spending a couple of days in the Venice area, which should hopefully allow me to get a few pictures because I believe it's quite photogenic. Actually, I have been once, but only as a small child. So off we go there. Weather today, quite a bit of cloud. Hopefully it won't rain, but we'll see what happens when we get there. That's it. Bye for now. Motorcyclists, the eternal optimists of this world. I suppose some degree of optimism is required when your preferred form of transport is an unstable two-wheel device with a couple of gallons of petrol nestled between your knees and with minimal protection from other road users and the road itself and the weather. You will have just heard me say, hopefully it won't rain. An eternal optimist. To be fair, at that point the roads were dry, the locals were walking around in their usual t-shirt and jeans style of dress, and I could have just been about to ride another day in overcast weather. However, look what happened within 10 minutes of me setting off. I have an idea. Let me share with you the thought processes of a motorcyclist as they ride into adverse weather. Not too bad. Road's dry, temperature isn't bad. Looks like it rained overnight. Glad it's dried up. Look, the locals are in their usual kit. Not an umbrella in sight. Hurrah! As it isn't actually raining, I can be a nice person and stop and let the lady across the road. Ooh. Look at that nasty cloud. Glad I'm not headed into that. Uh-oh. Road on the opposite side is getting a bit wet. Must have rained ahead. Glad it stopped. Wonder why those motorcyclists have stopped to put on waterproofs. Bah! Must be getting the trailing edge of that shower. It'll stop soon. I hope. bloody rain. Stop now! I'll stop now because the expletives now start and it gets quite unpleasant. As you can see, some days you get lucky, some days it's the other thing. On this day I had about 10 minutes of dry, warm motorcycling, then 5 minutes to get to the garage and undercover, during which time I got absolutely wet through, all the way to the Grundies. It was then waterproofs on over wet kit and the ride up through Slovenia and into Italy. It was a lovely ride, but very wet. Would have looked really good on camera. Once I got to Italy and onto the autostrada, the weather dried up and it was warm and I dried out, but it was no good for video. On the plus side, the gaiters worked. Having made it to a town just outside Venice, the next day I went for a walk around the city with my camera. Now, usually I explain a bit about the history of a place. I'm not going to do this now. Not for Venice. A, because it has a huge amount of history, and B, because I want to tell you a little bit more of my personal history and explain a bit more about the photos and what they mean to me. I hope you'll indulge me. Please be reassured, I'm not going to go into fine detail about each image. That would be so boring and probably earn me a place in Sude's Corner in Private Eye. No, this is more an overview of how I cope taking photographs in really crowded places, how I find what are, to me, evocative images. First, why Venice? My first introduction to Venice was on the same school trip in Yugoslavia. For some reason, on that trip we flew to Venice rather than an airport near Porridge. When we were due to leave, we had an evening flight, so it was decided we visit the city. It is only a short distance from the airport. Unfortunately, the coach drivers got the wrong message and delivered us to the airport, at which point there was a hasty negotiation and we were whisked into the city. We were very short of time, so we saw St. Mark's Square et al., the Bridge of Sighs, the Rialto Bridge, before being stampeded back to the airport. The next time Venice appeared on my radar was the BBC mini-series in 1981 or 2, Snowdon on Camera. It was hosted by Anthony Armstrong-Jones, Lord Snowdon, and explored the value of photographs and photography in various genres. The opening of the first episode was filmed in Venice and discussed the quality of the light in the city and how Canaletto used a camera obscura to create his very detailed paintings. The discussion then went on to determine the boundary between art and photography. From then on, I've always been interested in images from Venice. So, when I was in the neighbourhood and had some time, I wanted to come back. There was a danger in this. My dreams, my images of Venice may have been shattered, but I did really enjoy myself. As you look through the images, you may notice that many of them don't include people. If I was intending to end up in the aforementioned Sude's Corner, I might say that would be because there's always two people in each image, the photographer and the viewer. There is some truth in that, but it's also because I'm a little shy and dislike the possibility of upsetting people. Why do I concentrate on details rather than wide views? Well, apart from wide views usually being stacked out with people, wide views are great, but they're also a lot more difficult to take than people will give credit. All too frequently they can look flat, dull and uninteresting. Sometimes homing in on a particular detail will work just as well as a memory jogger as a broad canvas would. It is, after all, how the eye naturally builds up an image of any scene, taking little snapshots and then fitting them together. I hope that I can occasionally find an image that resonates strongly enough that without having to explain where I am, the pictures evoke an image, a feeling. Does the viewer get the same feeling that I do? No idea. And in many ways, that's immaterial. That the viewer does have an emotional response is great. The worst thing is when somebody looks at an image and is left unmoved. Anyway, I really enjoyed mooching around Venice. One other piece of advice I will give you is if you do go to the same place, if you do make it to Venice, do make an effort to move away from the obvious tourist attractions. There's so much more to the city than those. Not only that, if you then want to call for a coffee or a gelato, the prices away from the tourist areas are so much better. I'll finish this episode here. This has been a slightly different episode. and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like, consider subscribing and even hitting the bell icon so that you can be alerted whenever I might make another video. Thanks again for watching. Bye for now.